Hi all, welcome back for lesson 3, optimal nutrition. We'll be going over with the 5 basic tastes, and that leads into food preferences. And so we are just going to dive in. Make sure to have that activity and food log all filled out so you're ready for the end of the lesson to take a look to see how you're doing. So getting started, foods I like best taste sour, bitter, sweet, salty, or umami. There's no right or wrong answer here. Obviously, everyone has a different opinion and prefers one over the other. And I'm just going to share a little bit about myself here and say that I like foods that are sweet and salty. Having the two paired together is two extremes that make the perfect balance, and that's just my opinion. So food preferences, we often choose foods that taste good. I know that I want to enjoy my meals and my snacks, and I'm sure you do too, but the food that we think tastes good and that is going to satisfy our cravings are often the less nutritious foods. So there goes little thought into choosing nutrient rich foods. So we don't really think of the science side of it of, if I consume dairy, I'm building strong bones. If I eat this, it's going to help with my eyesight and growth and development and repairing and refueling and on and on. The science aspect of nutrient rich foods, we don't really think about that. We just think this is what tastes good to me, this is what I'm craving, this is what I'm going to fulfill. So fun fact is that we have a preference for sweet tasting foods and a dislike for bitter tasting foods. And so that can go back as to ancient humans to where bitter tasting foods were associated to being poisonous. And although we don't have that issue today, somehow we still prefer the sweet over the bitter. And that's going to take time to overcome. So just because you dislike bitter foods now, maybe giving yourself the opportunity to develop that is going to be something that you're going to have to experiment with. And we'll dig into that a little bit in a little bit. So where does taste begin? It begins in the brain. And so we already went over this, but the 5 basic tastes are sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and umami. And if you don't know what umami is, those are going to be the savory foods. And so I like to think of it as like the broths, the mushroom, the soy sauce. So how does taste begin in the brain? So the eyes and the nose work together as a pair. So we start taking in these pleasing images when we first see our plate, and then we're getting the aromas from it as well, and it smells delicious, it looks good, and they work together. So then the taste buds come into play when we start to chew and swallow. We have these taste receptors on our tongue and I believe on our cheeks as well. And so when everything gets combined together, we then perceive flavor. So how is it possible to be eating for both taste and health? And it's 100% possible. I mentioned earlier that it does take patience and just finding your groove, but the brain needs multiple exposures. Those dislike for bitter foods you can overcome it, and it's just a matter of allowing yourself to do it. So you need exposure. You need to see it and taste it over and over and over again in order to find out if you truly like it. So research shows that people can learn to like the bitter taste after a few times, and that can take up to 15 or 20 different tries. So you kind of have to keep an open mind. We should be eating from all food groups. You keep hearing that we should eat and get a variety because eating forms of all food groups every day supplies the nutrients, both the macro and the micronutrients that the body needs. So start with what tastes good, and then just remember from lesson 2 that we get energy from food and we need to supply the body with nutrients and energy needs. So food also gives our body the nutrients it needs to build new materials and carry out the processes that support our daily life. And so that's where variety is important, because everything that I just mentioned, we're gathering it from all food groups. And so how do you overcome something that you dislike? Some things And tips to help with that is trying new foods with friends and family. Maybe those who like foods that you dislike can somehow encourage you to try it the way they enjoy it, and perhaps that'll create a positive experience. Keeping an open mind and trying foods over and over again will get you there, and a list of nutritious foods you enjoy will start to grow. I know that from experience, I'll share my example here, is that I always thought I dislike eggplant. I've had it numerous of times. Over time, I've realized that eggplant actually does taste good, like in sauces, like pastas, or when it's grilled, put into like a sandwich or a burger, and it's really enjoyable that way for me. So finding what works for you may take some time, and having it, different cooking methods and seasonings can help guide you there. So, quick review, we have the macronutrients, which are what's going to be needed in large amounts. So, the body needs different amounts of each macronutrient, but a constant supply from all of them. Is going to be from like carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. And it's going to be based off of your age and activity level and general like health factors. So, carbohydrates are the main source of energy. It fuels the brain and supplies energy for all your cells. When you eat carbohydrates, they are broken down by digestion into these smaller units called glucose. So, carbohydrates are found in foods such as fruits and vegetables, milk, whole grains, and legumes. And then whole foods that contain carbohydrates also have fiber. And so that aids in digestion by moving materials through your digestive tract. So proteins, they are the building blocks of all cells. Protein helps repair your cells and make new ones. They are optimal for growth in children, teens, and pregnant women. And then protein is found in animal sources like meats and milk and fish. But then we also have those plant sources like beans, nuts, seeds, and some of the grains. And then we're going to move on to fats, which serve as protection. They help protect your vital organs. They also protect your cells, and they help the nervous system function properly. They keep skin and hair healthy and allow your body to absorb like some of the vitamins. And fats also have over twice as much energy as protein and carbohydrates. And what that means is that, carbohydrates and proteins have 4 calories per gram, and fats have 9 calories. So that is what they mean by twice as much energy. And so with that, fats can actually help slow down digestion. So it's key to kind of include a little bit of carbohydrates and fats, and maybe even a little bit of protein. So that way your digestion is slowed down, and then you have the fiber coming in to kind of push things along more smoothly, but also keeping you fulfilled longer. And then, so we have sugars here also, and there's 2 types to consider. So we have the natural and then the added sugars. Sugars have been added to many foods by companies and even ourselves when we cook or bake, and it doesn't provide any nutrients, but it does give us energy. So it does have calories associated to it. But then we have the foods and beverages that with added sugars that are part of our culture and traditions of many families and communities that we don't realize how much we are consuming. So cutting out sugar is not necessary, but it is recommended that added sugars be limited. And so they recommend 10% of your total calories coming from added sugars to try to keep it on the lower side. So sugars can happen naturally in fruits like fructose, and then milk, and that sugar from milk is called lactose. And it can also be added into foods. And so some things to look at are maybe in recipes when something's too acidic, we add sugar to it to kind of balance that out. Sugar can also be added to preserve something like in jam. And then also, we, a lot of our beverages, we already know that we prefer sweeter tasting foods and beverages, and that may be a reason why it's so easy for us to consume sugar over every other um, taste out there to have that sweet factor. However, we should definitely take a look to see what can be reduced, how much are we eating, can we swap something out. Okay, so go ahead and check out your food log. Has there been any changes made from lesson 1 to lesson 2? Maybe you are still including empty calories because you enjoy it, but not as much as before. And maybe you've noticed that you're including more vegetables. However, making sure that these goals are attainable is what's going to be beneficial to you long term. So, what works for someone may not work for you, and that's okay. Everybody's different. So, some things to consider are you getting enough fruits and vegetables? Did you include dairy? What grains were included? And then, are you drinking enough water? It's harder in the wintertime to realize when you're dehydrated. So, keeping some water at your desk and sip it throughout your day, refilling it when needed. And are you reducing the amount of sugary drinks in your day? All right, and then activities. How many minutes were you physically active? And then did this number decrease, increase, or stay about the same? If you are someone who's physically active and yesterday was a rest day, that is fine. Also, just because it's a rest day doesn't necessarily mean that you get to sit all day long. Maybe stretching or just getting up and walking is still okay. And then just remember that to enjoy what you're doing and get up and move around to get a boost of energy, especially when we're studying all day at home right now. That can definitely help us get through our days. So, what do we mean that variety is key? So, proper growth and functioning means getting over 40 different nutrients, but that doesn't mean we should be eating individual foods. Instead, we should be containing a different combination of nutrients that all work together. And so, we've already established that carbohydrates support the brain and the central nervous system with glucose as our quickest form of energy. And then we know that proteins form amino acids, and 11 of them need to be made from the diet while the body makes the rest, and that they are the building blocks for protein synthesis. And then we also learned that fat is protection for our vital organs, and they help transport essential nutrients into the bloodstream. So, variety is what we look at when we see, for the example, on the chart, we have dairy, which completes a carbohydrate, a protein, and a fat, as long as it's not fat free. And then if you take a look at vegetables and fruits, they only complete the carbohydrate factor. But then we move down to grains and protein, and they are all three macronutrients. And they also have micronutrients included with these sources. And so you can see here that including a little bit of everything in your meals can complete all three macronutrients for your day, and making sure that you are getting enough and providing plenty of nutrients for your body. So this is what we're looking at. We have the dairy, which is milk, yogurt, and cheese. So calcium, vitamin D, phosphorus, and protein work together to build strong bones. And so the macronutrients associated with dairy is all three. And then we have the micronutrients, which are the vitamins and minerals that we need. And that's going to be calcium, potassium, and vitamin D. So with veggies, we have vitamin A keeps your skin and your eyes healthy. Vegetables contain fiber, which helps with digestion. So we have carbohydrates and fiber, but then we have vitamin A, potassium, vitamin C, and folate. So fruits have a vitamin C, which helps your body heal and grow. And most fruit contains fiber, which is good for digestion, which we've already gone over. So fruits have carbohydrates and fiber, vitamin C, folate, and potassium. And then when we go into the grains, which are the bread, cereal, and pasta, we have the B vitamins that help convert calories into energy. And so whole grains contain fiber, which also aids in digestion. And so we have carbohydrates and fiber from whole grains. And then we have the B vitamins, magnesium, and iron. Lastly, we have the protein, which are the meat, beans, and nuts. Protein helps to build strong muscles and repair your tissues, and iron carries oxygen to all the cells in your body. So protein has protein and fat, but then the micronutrients, we have B vitamins, vitamin B12, vitamin E, zinc, iron, and magnesium. So you could see how combining all of these into your meals and as snacks throughout your day can be important. This is where we get the variety, because a little bit of this and a little bit of that will complete almost all of your needs, right? So now apply it. What small steps can you take that ensures the benefits of improved food choices? And what are the pros and cons of making a change? Remember that everyone is different, and where you're at may not be where someone else is at. And so taking a look at the foods that you're eating and your activity levels to see if you are improving, and have you noticed a difference? How do you feel when you eat one over the other? How is your studying going? Have you noticed any differences? What are some of the benefits that you've noticed from these small changes? So that's going to complete lesson 3, and I'll have lesson 4 out soon.